This is the Narcissist's Archivist from brainiron.com, a place to examine posts or essays or other things that I've written in the past that I think are worth revisiting. Previously written material will be presented as originally published, without modification unless otherwise noted. I'll offer context and commentary about the piece, what I may have been right or wrong about, and perhaps reflect on anything I've learned or what's changed in the intervening time. Today, I'll be reading a post first published in February of 2020 at brainiron.com, which I wrote as a response to then-President Donald Trump's Super Bowl interview with Fox News' Sean Hannity. First, though, a brief history of the relationship between two massive American institutions, the presidency and the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 54, like this year's Super Bowl 58, was a game between the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, quarterback of the victorious in both years Chiefs, was named the most valuable player of both games. 2020 was a presidential election year, as of course is 2024, and by all appearances, we can expect a rematch of 2020's contest. The first such presidential election rematch in the U.S. since Dwight Eisenhower defeated Adlai Stevenson for the second time in 1956, with now incumbent President Joe Biden going up once again against Donald Trump. One difference from 2020 is that Biden did not sit for a pregame interview this year, passing up the opportunity to appear on television in front of an audience of tens of millions of voters in what a White House spokesman suggested was an attempt to allow Americans to simply enjoy the game. The pre-Super Bowl presidential interview has been a near-annual tradition since President Barack Obama started making appearances during the pregame shows in 2009. But he was hardly the first president to take advantage of the game's huge audience and to bask in the strange patriotic fervor that seems to always surround the festivities. President Richard Nixon phoned Don Shula, the coach of the Super Bowl-bound Miami Dolphins in 1972, and suggested a play for the coach to run in the big game. The next year, Nixon made a call to the Washington Redskins coach, George Allen, and invited him to visit the White House before the 1973 game. Nixon's endorsement didn't help either year. Shula's Dolphins lost in 1972, and Allen's Redskins fell to those Dolphins in 73. The tradition of White House visits for Super Bowl champions dates back to the Pittsburgh Steelers getting invited to meet President Jimmy Carter in 1980, something President Ronald Reagan made into an annual occurrence during his years in office, a ritual that has played out virtually every year since. Reagan performed the opening coin toss via satellite connection from the White House to Super Bowl 19 in Pasadena in 1985.
Joining us for the toss of the coin, the President of the United States, Mr. Ronald Reagan.
Mr. McElhaney, it's a distinct pleasure and a privilege for me to be a participant, although I wish I could be a participant closer at hand. But who makes the call?
Mr. President, the Dolphins are the visiting team, and Dwight Stevenson will make the call. Captain Stevenson, what will you call? The Dolphins have called heads. Mr. President, will you please toss the coin?
It is tails.
San Francisco has won the toss.
President George H.W. Bush and First Lady Barbara Bush made a taped video appearance in the halftime show during the 1991 Super Bowl between the Giants and the Bills, delivering a message of gratitude to the children of active-duty military personnel who were then serving in the Persian Gulf.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are some very special guests at tonight's game. Representing every one of our 50 states and all branches of our armed forces are children of some of the brave Americans who have been deployed through Operation Desert Storm in the Persian Gulf. Please welcome them as we honor their mothers and fathers who proudly serve our country. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good evening from the White House to everyone in the Sunshine State and around the world enjoying this wonderful game.
What a pleasure it is to say hello to all the young people on the field tonight. Looking at you, it's easy to see why America can count on a bright and hopeful future.
Well, that's right. And you make us all very proud. But today we should recognize the men and women in our armed forces. Far away from home, they protect freedom in the Persian Gulf and around the world. And just as we salute these brave Americans, let's remember their families on the field with you today in Tampa. To the children of these men and women, let me say that as this and every day draws to a close, it's your mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, who are the true champions, the true heroes in our country. Not only do they have the heartfelt thanks and gratitude of this president, but of all Americans as well.
On behalf of the whole Bush family, thank you for allowing us to be with you tonight.
And God bless you all, and God bless all freedom-loving people around the world.
Instead of running that halftime show live, however, ABC elected to air a 15-minute news segment anchored by Peter Jennings, updating the goings-on in Operation Desert Storm in Iraq, which had begun just 10 days earlier.
I'm Peter Jennings at ABC News headquarters. We're going to take a few minutes at the beginning of halftime here to get as much up to date as we can with a number of developments in the war today. Remember, before it began, Saddam Hussein said he would use the oil weapon. Well, he did. And now the most significant U.S. attack of the last 24 hours has been to turn the oil off.
The halftime show featuring the Bushes aired after the game was over. The first pre-Super Bowl presidential interview took place in 2004, when George W. Bush sat down in the Rose Garden for a live remote interview with CBS Sports' Jim Nantz.
Mr. President, welcome. You know, as a proud Houstonian, you spent a lot of your younger years in this great city. This is a wonderful day for all of us who claim Houston as a part of our home.
It is a fabulous day for Houston, and Houston's a fabulous host for the Super Bowl. I've got a lot of great sports memories of Houston. Phi Slamma Jamma, Love You Blue, Nolan Ryan. Gosh, I'm still agonizing over the Astros losing to the Phillies in 1980. I also remember going to the Super Bowl in Rice Stadium and Minnesota and Miami. So I know Houston's a great town for sports.
President Barack Obama would turn that into an annual event, taking advantage of the built-in audience to give substantive news and policy-focused interviews to a news anchor of whichever network was airing the game that year. In 2009, he sat for a live 12-minute interview with NBC's Matt Lauer. Through the years, he would sit for lengthy interviews with CBS's Katie Couric, Scott Pelley, and Gayle King, NBC's Lauer again, and Savannah Guthrie, and Fox's Bill O'Reilly. The conversations usually an amiable combination of politics and policy and fluffy family stuff, though a bit more confrontational when O'Reilly was involved.
I got to get to the IRS, but I just want to say that your detractors believe that you did not tell the world it was a terror attack because your campaign didn't want that out.
Bill,
That's what they believe.
And they believe it because folks like you are telling them that.
I'm not telling them that. I'm asking you whether you were told it was a terror attack.
And what I'm saying is that is inaccurate.
All right.
We revealed to the American people exactly what we understood at the time. The notion that we would hide the ball for political purposes when a week later we all said, in fact, there was a terrorist attack taking place the day after I said it was an act of terror. That wouldn't be a very good cover-up if that's what we were.
I got to get to the IRS because I don't know what happened there. I know you think maybe we haven't been fair, but I think your heart is in the right place. Prediction for the game: who's going to win the Super Bowl?
I can't make a prediction. I don't know. These guys are too evenly matched. I think it is going to be 24-21, but I don't know who's going to be 24, and I don't know who's going to be 21.
Mr. President, thanks very much.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
He did these interviews in all 8 years of his presidency, never missing the chance to appear before potentially the largest television audience of the year. Donald Trump followed suit, giving the 2017 Super Bowl interview to Fox's O'Reilly, and making quite a bit of news when he insisted that Vladimir Putin's murderous record wasn't so bad when compared to that of the United States.
And Islamic terrorism all over the world.
Right.
Major fight, that's a good thing. Will I get along with him? I have no idea. It's very
He's a
possible
killer,
I
though.
won't.
Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent? You think our country's so innocent?
I don't know of any government leaders that are killers in America.
Well, take a look at what we've done, too. We've made a lot of mistakes. I've been against the war in Iraq from the beginning.
Yeah, mistakes are different than...
A lot of mistakes, okay, but a lot of people were killed. So a lot of killers around, believe me.
Trump opted out in 2018, declining NBC's interview request, but returned in 2019 for a brief sit-down with CBS's Maggie Brennan. In 2020, he sat for a friendly chat with Fox's Sean Hannity, which is the subject of the post that follows. Biden was interviewed before the Super Bowl by CBS's Norah O'Donnell in 2021 and NBC's Lester Holt in 2022, but turned down the opportunity in both 2023 and 24. Perhaps after NBC decided to run only 3 minutes of his chat with Holt, the administration determined that putting the unpopular president in front of a perhaps mostly hostile audience for only a couple of minutes simply wasn't worth the hassle and the potential downside.
You can't wrap up an interview like this without asking Cincinnati or Los Angeles.
Well, my teams are out, and I love this young quarterback from Cincinnati. He's an Ohio boy, can make everybody happy, but we also have some, I think Los Angeles is going to be hard to beat.
Mr. President, you've been generous with your time. Thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you.
I worry that the strategy of hiding the president as much as possible will backfire, suggesting that those around him fear that he cannot make a strong case for himself against Trump. Then again, Trump himself has always been the best argument against more Trump, so perhaps keeping the clearly diminished Biden away from the camera is best. Only time will tell. The 2020 Super Bowl interview with Hannity makes this point clearly. Trump is his own worst enemy, always telling you exactly who he is, in that weird way of his. While never exactly telling the truth, he's always revealing it, at least about himself, if you're willing to see and hear it. It's a deeply strange thing, this intertwining of the presidency and our country's most popular cultural product. And I think, looking back on Reagan's and H.W. Bush's early forays into the show make that plain. Obama's full-on embrace of the intrusion of the political into the cultural was a reflection of who he thought he was to Americans. And, to be fair, he wasn't wrong. He was a cultural force unlike any I had seen up to that point, and it weirded me out. I tend to think Trump's political career would have been utterly impossible without the potency of Obama's cultural celebrity, though I suspect Obama, like Trump, was simply taking advantage of a shift that was happening rather than causing one himself. Perhaps with another 4 years of a deeply unpopular presidency on the horizon, regardless of who wins, things will ebb back in the other direction, and the great American institution of the Super Bowl won't want to associate itself with something so divisive and widely despised as the great American institution of the presidency. It is said that the government we elect is the government we deserve, and though it's a bit of a platitudinous tautology, I think the spirit of it is more or less correct. All I can do here, 8 months or so out from the 2024 presidential election, that is a matchup of two staggeringly unpopular presidents, neither of whom seems terribly likely to even survive the next 5 years, is hope that we get very slightly better than we deserve. Now the post, which is entitled, Donald Trump, World's Greatest Sports Fan. Donald Trump is always telling you exactly who he is. It helps that he is an extremely, almost hilariously uncomplicated person, a 4-piece Lego minifig of a man, all hairpiece and red painted-on tie, Frankensteined into a visceral stimulus creature about whom it is impossible to imagine an interior life that is at all at odds with his behavior in any given moment. Whether he is poorly reading prepared remarks, or ripping through a newly updated enemies list from the East Room, or tweeting, or just kind of riffing for the cameras in front of Marine One, Trump is never not wholly Trump. The constant Trumpiness gives life to the execrable and excrementous cliché voiced by real Americans, to every coastal elite reporter dispatched to the diners of the heartland in search of answers. That Trump just tells it like it is. The it here is best understood not as reality, as experienced and understood by virtually everyone else, but as whatever thoughts and emotions happen to flit from one neuron to another in his miraculous little brain. It is certainly not truth, as it is widely understood, because truth, of course, doesn't exist as some external, identifiable, objective standard.
Truth isn't truth.
He's just completely himself, that self-made and fully ablaze straw man, constantly telling us the story of his aggrievement, telling it like it is. He seems to lack even the concept that he ought to be any other way. This punishing don't call it authenticity, it's always freshly low tide with Trump, all of his needs and neuroses just there in the sun and mud, has made him the single greatest pop psychology culture-wide case study in history. His sheer elemental reactivity makes it impossible to look away, whether he's there to be watched or if you're just watching other people react to him. He's whatever the opposite of a universal solvent is. And he's always telling you exactly who he is, whether directly or because his feeble psyche can't help but to project and amplify his every insecurity. In just the last week, a particularly bonkers week, even by his galactically inflated and cosmically expanding standard, he has provided dozens of examples of his disordered and disqualifying inhuman weirdness. To wit, just a few. The big speech on Tuesday night was not so much an update on the current State of the Union as it was 80 minutes of Donald Trump attempting to demonstrate the incredible breadth of his own magnanimity. The bestower-in-chief gave a scholarship to a girl who didn't need one, reunited a soldier with his family like it was the fifth inning of a Memorial Day baseball game, had his wife pin a Presidential Medal of Freedom on Rush Limbaugh's moribund corpus, of all people, and handed a country to a wannabe coup artist. He was demonstrating his benevolence, basking in his own willingness to deploy his power so gently and generously, taking half a step back from the microphone whenever he deigned that the elected, terrified cultists in the audience stand and applaud. The second half of the speech was a sordid recap of the putrefying corpse of Democrat-controlled America, the carnage palpable. Inserted here is a screenshot of a tweet from the Washington Post's Dan Zak, and it just says, words in the second half of Trump's State of the Union speech: murder, murders, brutal rape, terrible 3 times, aliens 5 times, catastrophic, gruesome, deadly, viciously, smashed, hijacked, barbarians, bloodthirsty, horrifying, miserable, ruthless, butcher, evil, terror. Which his supporters, of course, found positively uplifting. And then there's a screen cap of the Sean Hannity program. At the bottom, Chiron says, Trump delivers optimistic State of the Union. And the gentlemen appearing in the panel are Congressman Jim Jordan, Devin Nunes, Matt Gaetz, and Mark Meadows. It was a bizarre speech, poorly delivered. He so rarely has any idea what the words he's reading actually mean that he doesn't know when in the text he's meant to stop for applause. On Thursday morning, at the definitely not parodic National Prayer Breakfast, Trump insulted the faith of his political enemies and openly mocked the possibility of such an event being remotely meaningful.
I don't like people who use their faith as justification for doing what they know is wrong. Nor do I like people who say, I pray for you, when they know that that's not so. So many people have been hurt, and we can't let that go on. We're grateful to the people in this room for the love they show to religion. Not one religion, but many religions. They're brave, they're brilliant, They're fighters. They like people. And sometimes they hate people. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm trying to learn. It's not easy. It's not easy. When they impeach you for nothing, then you're supposed to like them. It's not easy, folks. I do my best.
On Thursday afternoon, he held court for over an hour in the East Room, calling his myriad enemies evil and corrupt and deranged, while eulogizing the dignity of the assembled cultists one by one. He betrayed his own withering shame while praising the slamming hot bod of another man.
When I first got to know him, Jim Jordan, when I first got to know Jim, I said, he never wears a jacket. What the hell's going on? He's obviously very proud of his body.
He expressed genuine disbelief that a wife would be quite upset when her husband was shot very nearly to death, because his own wives have always hated him.
And we saw a man that was not going to make it. He was not going to make it. He was the doctor. And I told him, his wife, I said, she loves you. Why do you say that? Because she was devastated. A lot of wives wouldn't give a damn. A lot of wives would have said, hey, yeah. I said, how's he doing? Oh, she couldn't even talk. She was inconsolable. Most wives would say, not good. Listen, I'm going home now.
Told a homely congresswoman that he likes her name far more than her face.
I have a couple of women that became stars, you two. And I always liked the name of her, I liked the name, Lesko. I liked it. That's how I picked it. I liked the name. I saw that face. I saw that everything. They gave me cards. She had like 7 opponents, right? And you have no idea how much the public appreciates how smart, how sharp you are. This I can't tell. I can't tell. They just said, she's really good. She's really talented. I said, let's go.
And pointed out that he probably wouldn't be president anymore if he hadn't fired James Comey.
They were going to try and overthrow the government of the United States, a duly elected president. And if I didn't fire James Comey, we would have never found this stuff.
Oh, also, he thinks Lisa Page and Elise Stefanik are hot.
This is Peter to Lisa. He's probably trying to impress her for obvious reasons. What's going on with you, Elise? So I even said, I was up campaigning for helping her, but I thought, she looks good. She looks like good talent. But did I not realize when she opens that mouth, you were killing them, Elise?
Put verbal scare quotes around the military rank of a Purple Heart recipient.
But Lieutenant Colonel Vidbin and his twin brother, right?
And seemed to admit that either Barron is not his actual son, or at least that he hasn't spent a single moment of the last 14 years raising the boy.
And Ivanka's here, and my sons, and my whole family. And that includes Barron. That includes Barron, who's up there as a young boy. Stand up, honey.
Also this week, he was a mere 19 Senate votes away from being the first U.S. president to be removed from office by impeachment.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
It was a pretty crazy week. But what prompted this post isn't any of that, but something Trump said to Sean Hannity during his pre-Super Bowl interview last Sunday. No, not the petty and grade schoolish name-calling of his potential presidential rivals, and not the lunatic claims of unprecedented accomplishment, and not the insistence that all of his enemies are just haters and liars. No, I'm here to talk about what Trump thinks makes sports great. It's very weird and very much in keeping with the established fact that, in everything he does and says, Trump is always telling you exactly who he is.
I love sports. I think sports mirror life. You got to learn to win. Sometimes you don't always win. I know you're not sick of winning, is my guess. But also the harder you work, the better you do. That's very Americana. What do you love about sports?
Well, it is. It's sort of a little bit of a microcosm of life. You have winners, you have champions, you have people that you expect to see that final play. You have great coaches like Belichick. You have people that you expect more out of, and oftentimes they produce. Then you have people that you just don't expect they're going to do it, and oftentimes they don't. It's a microcosm of life.
Mr. President, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
What Donald Trump professes to love about sports, despite being prompted in the question itself with a perfectly acceptable human response, is precisely the opposite of what I would wager every other normally functioning human being loves about sports. Trump is always telling you exactly who he is. Here, Trump is telling you that he's deeply, deeply strange. If not quite entirely the fun thing about watching sports is the increasingly rare experience of the chaos and unpredictability of the live and unexpected. The reason live sports is just about the only thing people across the world all at once turn the television on for anymore is the possibility of seeing people do crazy and unexpected things in defiance of the established narrative about what everyone else thinks they can do. I watch sports to see people achieve the unthinkable, to transcend the essentialist limitations imposed by my own preconceived notions and handicapped imagination. Trump, it turns out, to my great surprise, is the absolute worst sort of sports fan, the total determinist. The winners won because the winners always win, because they are winners. The losers lost because the losers always lose, because they are losers. What he likes about sports is that they reveal the barest truth about one's predetermined character. He thinks this is what makes sports like life. That life is a series of tests that only peel back the facade of trying and determination and work and passion and luck. So much luck. Just an impossible amount of improbability made real by the unthinking bounce of the universe, rather than anything beautifully unknowable and imperfectly human. What I love about sports is the opposite. What I love about life is the opposite. The not knowing, the never knowing, the transcendence of the established narrative, the surprising power of the human spirit to rage against and occasionally even overcome the tyrannical essentialism of someone else's limited definition of who can achieve what. Donald Trump is always telling you exactly who he is. Believe him. This has been the Narcissist's Archivist, and a revisiting of an essay from February of 2020. For a transcript of today's episode and links to everything mentioned, please visit brainiron.substack.com. If you would like to support this and the other blogging and podcasting endeavors of the Brainiron multinational media empire, please visit brainiron.substack.com, where you can become a paying subscriber. If you can think of anyone else who might enjoy this or whatever else it is we're up to around here, please consider sharing. Thanks, and barring the very real possibility that we get lost here in the Narcissist's archives, cursed to wander among all the things we've ever thought, an ego consuming itself forever, never to be seen or heard from again, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.